Hello and welcome to our revision series on early Elizabethan England, focusing on key topic 1, Queen, Government and Religion from 1558 to 1569. Today we're going to be looking at part 3, which is the challenges to the religious settlement of Elizabeth. The key content that we'll be covering in today's episode will be the nature and extent of the Puritan challenge and the nature and extent of the Catholic challenge, including the role of nobility, the papacy and foreign powers. So the first challenge we're going to look at is the Puritan challenge, and this comes in two different controversies during the early impact of the religious settlement. The first of which is the crucifix controversy. The crucifix is the depiction of Jesus on the cross. Now, Elizabeth wanted to keep that image of the crucifix in her church as a compromise to the Catholic religion. However, the Puritans rejected this because the crucifix, especially with the statue of Jesus on it, represents idols, which they were completely and utterly against. As a result of which, some bishops from the Puritan faith threatened to resign. Elizabeth ended up backing down from this, as there weren't enough Protestant clergy to replace those that would have resigned because of this controversy. The second controversy to look at from the Puritan point of view is the vestment challenge. The vestment is to do with the idea of special clothing that's worn by priests. This was rejected by Puritans, as it suggests that priests were of a higher status than ordinary people. They also rejected the concept of priests being able to perform miracles, which was believed by the Catholic religion. Elizabeth wanted clergy to wear vestments through the concept of the royal injunctions. The issue with the vestment controversy was that the majority of priests consented to Elizabeth's insistence, and therefore there was no backing down from Elizabeth. As a result, there was less opposition to that of the crucifix controversy. The Catholic challenge came in different forms. But first of all, we're going to look at the idea of the papacy. So the papacy launched a counter-reformation to combat the rise of Protestantism within Europe, particularly within Germany and the Netherlands. In 1566, the Pope issued an instruction for Catholics to not attend Church of England services as a form of opposition. Elizabeth combated this by ordering authorities not to enforce non-attendance, otherwise known as recusants, too much. Elizabeth therefore preferred to ignore the smaller levels of disobedience and would rather go for the larger levels instead. This meant that England was stable in the first decade of her reign, but there was still further challenges from England's nobility. The nobility were in the north of England and tended to be more Catholic than the rest of the country. They were also more likely to oppose the religious settlement. Because of having been prosperous under Mary I, who was a Catholic, they were a bit concerned with regards to the lack of influence that they managed to have in court under Elizabeth I. Therefore, because of this reduction in their influence, they targeted their dislike towards Cecil and Dudley, who were two of Elizabeth's favourites and were also Protestant. This did end up leading to the Northern Ireland Rebellion, which we'll cover in key topic 2. There were further challenges from the Catholic side, but these were from foreign nations. So the first one we're going to look at is a foreign challenge from France. Now, the French weren't particularly happy with Elizabeth, because she agreed to assist French Protestants in the religious war in France in 1562. This was in an attempt to recapture Calais, which was a port that was lost during the reign of Mary I. The policy of assisting French Protestants, however, failed quite quickly, as the Protestants had made peace with the Catholics later on in the year. The support for the Protestants irritated both Philip of Spain and the King of France. The Treaty of Troyes, that was signed by Elizabeth, confirmed that Calais ended up belonging to France, so therefore Elizabeth had failed in the aim of recapturing that port as well. The second foreign challenge came from Spain. Now we need to introduce the role of the Netherlands at this point, in that the Netherlands, being one of the key trading partners of England, also belonged to the King of Spain, Philip II. Now, due to Elizabeth's support for Protestant rebels within the Netherlands, Philip ended up banning the import of English cloth to the Netherlands, and therefore having quite a significant impact on the English trade and economy. In reaction to that, Elizabeth ceased trading with the Netherlands altogether. This embargo affected both countries economically, as Netherlands was a key trade partner for England, but also the money that they were generating would also have gone to Spain as well. The reason for this embargo was because Elizabeth was concerned that France and Spain would form an alliance against England, and at this point she still didn't have enough money due to her financial pressures in order to raise an army to defend her throne and England itself. The third foreign challenge came from the idea of the Dutch revolt. So, as part of his control over the Netherlands and to ensure that the influence is still there, Philip of Spain set up the Spanish Inquisition to keep the Spanish territories true to the Catholic faith. The Spanish Inquisition led to the torturing and burning alive in public executions of anyone that was not keeping with the Catholic faith within those countries. The actions of the Spanish Inquisition united both Protestants and Catholics against Spain, and then led to the Dutch revolt against the Spanish king. In reaction to this, Philip sent the Duke of Alba to the Netherlands with 10,000 men to put down the revolt. The action succeeded, and this led to thousands of Dutch Protestants fleeing to England in exile. Elizabeth was concerned with Alba's presence for two reasons. The first off was there was a 10,000 strong army within the Netherlands, which was within striking distance of England. But she also did not want to be seen as the monarch leading the Protestant charge within Europe. As mentioned before, because of the financial problems that Elizabeth had when she came onto the throne, she wished to avoid war and openly condemn the rebels. Some Dutch rebels that fled the Netherlands were known as sea beggars, and their key aim was to attack Spanish ships in order to steal the gold and resources that was on them that were going towards the Netherlands. Elizabeth did begin to allow sea beggars refuge in English ports. Later on, Elizabeth decided to take gold belonging to Spain, whose ships had docked in England to prevent it from being attacked by sea beggars. This greatly angered Spain because this was a loan from Genoa that they needed to pay back. So let's have a look at the extent of challenge to the religious settlement. If this came up as a 16-mark question in the exam, then our criteria within our introduction would be that the biggest challenge is the one that either generates the most support or the one that is likeliest to stop the religious settlement. So if we look at the idea of generating support, the challenges from Catholic opposition were supported by influential nobles. However, these were concentrated in the north, although it did lead to a large rebellion in 1569. The second element of generating support is that Puritan support for crucifix controversy did lead to a change by Elizabeth. However, this was the only change that was made to the religious settlement by Elizabeth, because the vestment controversy was backed by the bishops. Overall, though, there was still widespread acceptance of the religious settlement from the public as a whole. This was mainly due to the appearance of the church and the services that Catholics and Protestants were seeing through the Act of Uniformity. In terms of the likeliest challenge to stop the settlement, the alliance between France and Spain would have been dangerous for Elizabeth and for England if they decided to invade England and hold a Catholic alliance. The Puritan issues did not challenge the settlement enough, and there was only one small part that was changed, which was the crucifix controversy. Recusants were not punished, so it seemed unnecessary to pursue a stop into religious settlement. So, in summary, for this part, the challenges to the religious settlement came from both home and abroad, and from two different areas of Christianity. In England, the Catholic challenge was limited until 1569, which was the rebelling in the Northern Earls. Puritans challenged the use of Christian crucifixes and vestments within the church. And Elizabeth sent troops and money to deal with Catholic challenges to Protestants in Scotland, France, but not the Netherlands. England's relations with Spain decreased after the Dutch revolt. That hereby ends part 3 of this revision session. Please make sure that you like and subscribe, and then move on to part 4, which is talking about the threat of Mary Queen of Scots.